Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to the Eastern people. If anyone else is joining from somewhere else, good morning as well. Today's topic is personal branding, dominate your future. I'm glad to welcome Rahat Khan, our today's speaker, senior subject matter expert at Ford Motor Company. After finishing his BSc and MSc from Florida International University, Rahat has now been involved with the automotive industry for almost 20 years, with about 12 years of experience at different roles at Ford. He has led global teams in electric vehicle calibration, automation, and advanced driver assistance systems, contributing to projects like Ford Mustang Mach-E and advanced e-shifter technologies. Beyond engineering, and that's what we are going to most likely focus more on today as well, Rahat has also explored the creative side, venturing into media and performance arts, branded under Baksho, reflecting his dynamic and well-rounded personality. So let's hear from Rahat. With that, let's all welcome Rahat Khan. Go ahead, Rahat.
Thanks, Ovi. Thanks to Aabea for arranging this. Thanks for having me, everybody. We're going to have some personal branding details. There's going to be some tools to identify, some reference, some call to action. There's going to be some open floor. Let's start with a timeline study. Now is the year 2025. Think about it 5 years ago, 2020. What are you doing? What your friends were thinking of you, talking about you, talking on your behalf, or you're thinking of yourself of, maybe you're a little lost, funny, resilient. What is the word that comes to your mind that 5 years ago you were trying to figure things out, leading something, So give yourself a word or, a definition. Now go back 10 years ago, in 2015. Now, if any of my audience is 10 years old or less, you may not have that 2015 year, right? But for the rest, in 2015, where were you? And what were you thinking of yourself? And what were you basically doing? And what were you thinking to do from that point of view? So what I was trying to do is creating a timeline, right? And we're going to do in the future some goal planning. But for right now, we need to kind of look at ourselves like 2010, even go backward, 2005, 2000. So going back in those timeline, 2015, 2020, and now come back to 2025 and think the same way. Think about yourself, what you've been planning, and give yourself a definition, give yourself a name. So there's a transition, right? Different timeline and different definition of yourself. And how much value has been changed? And what changed? What caused those changes? Did you improve yourself a lot? Did you think of yourself like, oh, 10 years back, I said something, I did something that was really stupid? That means you already improved yourself because you have some regret or you figure it out over the time. So if that's the case, then you should, you don't have to share it with the team, but you can write it down and create that timeline for yourself so that you know where you're kind of going. All right, so the next slide, before I go to the next slide, I should say one thing, that trend is an automatic branding of yourself. Sometimes you define yourself what people say on the social media, right? You made a comment, somebody said, oh, that's stupid, oh, that's funny. If 5 people say funny, you think of yourself as a funny person. If somebody, if a lot of people think of that, whether it's a good or bad, you define yourself by what people think of you than what you think of yourself, because you are so connected to the social media. It's no time to detach yourself. We don't detach ourselves from the social media, from the phone, from the online world. When's the last time you turn off your phone, walk to a park, walk through the forest or sit down next to a lake and just think of yourself, being a little bit selfish and self-centric, of course. When the last time you did that? Think of yourself like, what did I do in the last 10 years? What I'm going to do in the next 10 years? So we don't really have the time to define ourselves. We define based on what's out there. People are defining us. We are letting people defining us, then taking the control to define ourselves. Is because we are so connected and so involved and so much depending on the whole system. And maybe it's intentional. Maybe the system is created so that 99% people will be like that. There's going to be only 1% people who will think differently. And that's where a made-up brand or a self-made brand will make a difference. That's why Apple is a brand, and there's going to be thousands of startups, never going to be Apple. So, and that's where I wanted to start. You do have a brand without you even realizing it. And when I say brand, that really means your persona, your way of thinking. I hope it doesn't get influenced by other people, right? But it does. But at the end of the day, we need to realize that and take controls on what we do, what we say, or how we think, because that's the only way you can progress yourself, hitting the maximum, hitting the edge. Otherwise, people will tell you, oh, your self-confidence is very low, your leadership is very low. Or maybe they will push you up one day, say, hey, you are a great leader. And then you, depending on what they say, you're waiting for their validation only. And then they're the one who they're gonna one day gonna call you and say, you're not good anymore. And you're gonna be frustrated. It's like, hey, this guy told me I'm a leader. Today I'm not. Because you are depending on other people. They created your brand for you. And then they diminish your brand. It's because you didn't have any control over yourself. So let's go to the next slides. There's going to be a way to define your brand, but defining your brand or your persona or your personality, personal branding is linked to your personality. Kinda, the reason I say kinda is because you kind of choose what you put out there. People don't know your private life. So it's your decision. What do you want to put out there? Because that will link in the online world and maybe in the offline world all together. It's your decision. It's your control. What do you want to put out there as your persona? If I want to show that I'm a funny guy, then when I talk to other people, I will bring out these jokes and try to be that funny person. But I maybe in my private life, I'm just a sad person. I don't know. I may be a funny person. I don't know. But it's really your persona that you want to show. You want to put it out there on the online world, on the social media. And that's why the personal brand, it's not a natural thing, but it's a definition that you create for yourself. So most people don't, most people have personal brand, but they don't have control over their personal brand. But today, it's just an awareness that we should look into it and then connect and take control over our personal brand and then create that to benefit ourselves, right? If you think about Apple, what really comes to your mind? I mean, Apple wasn't a company like Apple, today's Apple, uh, in 20 years back, right? Where just people used to think, oh, Apple is a very ugly looking box computer. But they took control over their company, of course, and they started thinking differently. So the first thing that comes to people's mind is, Apple thinks different. So I want to compare to a person now. Uh, let's say a brand name person, Elon Musk or Dr. Enos. Do you find a connection here? I mean, Elon Musk definitely thinks different. I mean, some people call him crazy. That's fine, but he thinks definitely different. He really thought that he can bring back a space shuttle and land it so that you can reuse it. How many people really thought about it? Because when you send a space shuttle in outer space, bringing back and landing that on the on the shuttle pad or the launch pad, it's almost impossible, we thought. But he was able to do it because he thought differently. People thought he was crazy. And now he can reuse those space shuttle again. I mean, that's way beyond a lot of our imagination that happened. So I'm just comparing. And then right? Where there's Apple, there's a branded person, and then that's you. What kind of things in your life you think differently? And people may call it stupid, like, why do you think differently? But you know what? Stick to it. If you think differently, stick to it, write it down and work on it. And sometimes detach yourself from all these people's noise and work on it and come up with a solution and work on it more, and find a circle because your network is your human capital. From your network, find people who also think differently, who appreciate you, who believe in you, starting with your parents. That's a free bonus for ourselves that even if somebody don't believe in ourselves, our parents will always be in ourselves, right? So I'm just saying you're going to have a lot of friends in your lifetime who believes in you. They don't try to control you, but they will believe whatever you think. Even if you think differently, they will believe in you. So that's where you're going to create that connection. So when I'm comparing think differently for Apple, for Elon Musk, or for Dr. Enos, for a branded person, and for you, you can align them, like how I can rank, how I can protect this. Thinking differently will matter maybe 5 years down the road, maybe 10 years down the road. So one thing Apple changes is instead of like, hey, let's build that device and people will like it. No, they did a lot of market study. They focus on user experience. Say, okay, how user will feel comfortable, and we're gonna design from there. When you talk to Dr. Yunus or someone, high achiever, what do you realize? Their personality is, very adapting, and they will be talking to you about maybe things that you like. You don't realize they don't care about that. However, just to make you feel comfortable, how they talk, how they communicate to the world, to the people, to anyone. So our communication also matters here. How we focus not only on ourselves, but focusing on you, focusing on my audience. And that's the customer base. Apple looked into the customer and say, okay, we're going to design backward. We're going to look what customer wants, what our audience wants, and we're going to design backward. I'm not going to name a lot of any companies, but I worked for a lot of companies where I'm sitting in a design board and they were actually thinking like, we're going to design this and I'm going to make people like it. And in my mind, I was like, that is so stupid, but I cannot really say anything. But what I understand is we are not really thinking like Apple. And that's why Apple is Apple and not a lot of company will become Apple.